Hi, everybody. Welcome to CreateAWorld with the collaborators of CreateAWorld. I want to really thank you for being here. It's really a remarkable moment in time. And it's a great time to be in your company, in the presence of your company. So we have no idea what we're going to talk about today because there's a quote. It was either the frog who said it's not easy to be green, or it's Yoda. I can never remember which one, but I remember the quote. And it says that one is not alive unless life is lived. So when we took on CreateAWorld as collaborators, it wasn't in the genre of promotion. It wasn't in the genre of even trying to draw attention to ourselves. It's because we had noticed that we've been having conversations that seem to give us a sense of merit, give us a sense of not only individual merit, but actually the merit of what might be going on at this time, which we are living. We're not talking about something, we're living something. And then as the guests that we've had on, including Dr. Heather Hunt, we were inviting people that were living something to come on with us. And we're in times where we have been enculturated to find the truth, to be told what's real. And we've moved far away from the phenomenon of when human beings just gathered together and talked. And in the talking, a world rose, new ideas, not to be just applied, but to be lived. And that's the intent of CreateAWorld. It isn't an action-based project where you're now good. We're going to give you tools to create a world, because who can be trusted is human beings. Human beings, when they come into dialogue with each other, when they share with each other, something naturally rises. What we call what is present in the field seems to become available like a magic. And human beings have been through an evolutionary process many times. And we're in one of those evolutionary moments where what we discover and what we become present to is more than likely living outside the boundaries of what we've known up until now. Not only in information like science, but also in relationship. And CreateAWorld is a collaboration of relationship. That's what I wanted to start the day with. So we've all come together to share.
Well, that reminds me of, how the way the indigenous looked at conversation. So you have, I think we're all familiar with the talking stick that we've been, in Native American, and in the indigenous Australians, it's yarning. And the elements of that isn't like, okay, everybody has 3 minutes. It's like we talk until we have finished talking. We talk until we see all pieces of the puzzle. Tyson Yunka Porta, in his book Sand Talk, talks about even, he's trying to write this book and he's been active with his indigenous folk, but one of them had an idea that he didn't agree with. And he said, well, I have to practice what my people, their way was. And he found that in listening to them, he found a piece that was missing in his own logic. So I think that's what we're aiming for. I think that's what this kind of conversation is. Keep expanding kind of in all the different directions to see what's forming. And it's only in the conversation that we can see what's forming or hear what's forming or feel what's forming. So it's exciting, very exciting.
Yeah.
I want to share too that I have a remembrance of my auntie and I would go visit, and we would start a conversation out of whatever was rising. And before we knew it, that 8 p.m. conversation ended somewhere around 5 or 6 a.m. when the sun rose. And we explored Deepak Chopra books and audios we were listening to, and Tai Chi and movement and our health and wellness. It didn't matter. It's just whatever fed, and we just kept feeding one another in the exploration. And it's truly some of my greatest memories in my lifetime, to just be with another person, her, in conversation and no direction, just being with one another. I feel so grateful for those moments with someone in my life. So that's what pinged for me.
I'll have to say, yesterday I went to an aqua size class at my gym, and I had met a woman the week prior who kind of schooled me on how to be in the pool. And then yesterday, after our class, I heard her talking about a trip that she's taking. And I am so thrilled because I chose to lean in the pool and listen to what she had to say. And I've now formed a brand new relationship with someone locally who speaks, our language, and who is forging her own pathway in a healing practice. And we stayed in the pool for an hour afterward, talking and just sharing the back and forth of, well, this has been my path and this is what I'm doing. And turns out she's going to do a shamanic healing course in Amsterdam next week. And then when she comes back, she and I are going to gather together and work on a website and do all these things and see where the interfaces are. So I am just thrilled that I found someone locally, and she's adorable. And in the conversation, it was just so rich, going back and forth, listening to another's journey that they've been on, who is fresh and passionate and excited about a new chapter in life. So I love forming new conversations with people, meeting new people. All of a sudden, it seems now, with this new journey I'm on at the gym. So it's very exciting.
I think that's also true, Liz, that there's something about stepping into a word and living it. And we stepped into a word called collaborators. And I think it's so interesting to step into a word begins to bring that word alive. And actually Victoria and her auntie centuries ago were collaborators. And Heather and I are collaborators, and on the book that we're finishing the next few days. And it's really amazing, because when you think about the whole conversation about polarization right now, and then collaboration, there's no polarization. And we aren't trying to end polarization. We've just became fascinated with collaboration. And just to let the audience know, this is not a screen share behind us. This is actually our motel room at the Officers Club. I just want to make sure that you don't think it's a screen share. All right, over to you, Lori.
Just to expand on what everybody was saying, or has been saying, it brings me to the collaboration and the being with another through music, dance, and having a language without words. And to me, it's there's a depth that is like the whole body speaking rather than the thoughts of conversation or what have you. So being in any and all, both and of the conversation, whether it's through language, whether it's through body language, it's beautiful. And we all have the potentiality to find and be in the depth of that.
When you said we're not trying to be, to end polarization and create collaboration, which is kind of a polarization, I was reminded of this wonderful book, The Kinavata. And what they did was, I don't remember the term, but they just turned their backs and just declined. They just were
Holka. It was called Holka.
no, Holka was when they went down inside.
That's right.
But there was a term for when something was unacceptable or life defeating. And it wasn't for or against, it was just more like a no, thank you. I'm not going to include that in my life. And so I guess it was sort of a voting against something, but they would just stand in what was life defeating, life enhancing. And within that, they had room for quite a wide range. And then, what you all are describing is the indigenous way of engaging until something had come alive. Something was in conscious awareness and could be lived, or I don't know how to call, or like set aside, like a memory, but even that's an inclusion. And it's just I think there's such a lovely rhythm to that I'm really looking at exploring more. Like I just discovered my church has sponsored a group that call themselves Small Town. And their whole goal is they sort of focus on artists. But their whole goal is, what is equitable living? What is it to live in community equitably? So I'm going to beat a path to their door pretty soon and find out what is this. And it's just a remarkable process, but not necessarily easy, because at the beginning you said it's not easy being green, and that was Kermit the Frog. That was Kermit. And I've really noticed that it takes a lot of engagement to prepare for and embrace newness, blessings, changes. And I find that whole process to be very fascinating too.
I want to go back to what you said and what Lori had said, because when you read the Kinavata, it's all about the energy you want to be in, not the position. It's about they kept the energy of their field or their community alive by simply not having things that made it weaken or made their link to each other weaken. That it was innate. It wasn't applied. It was innate. And so when someone would turn their back, neither person would be offended, actually. It would just that the person would realize that that person wasn't part of that conversation. And I've noticed this too, because I'm through a huge body of work, over a half a century. I'm on the other side of that. I was talking to my son Aaron about it last night, and how beautiful it is to know that you succeeded at something that might not have been just for monetary gain. And he was saying how I'd pass that on to my kids, which was very moving to me. And, but I have, because I'm no longer holding a place in the society where I have to look a certain way, I'm in my community, I've what I would call uncloaked. And now it's about my life and how I love to live. And well, human beings have a tendency to be offended by each other more now than ever. And it costs a human being the ability to be themselves if we don't have room for all of us. And before I would stay cloaked because I knew the value of the work I was doing, and that the work was more valuable than being known for myself. And I'm really saying this to people that are moving into leadership or in leadership, because I'm not anymore. You know, I have no position I have to hold, that I have to take the position of making sure I don't lose people and the value of what I have to offer because of my own particular way of existing and my own privacy. So it's been quite a journey recently, and I'm happy. I mean, I'm really happy that a body of work is done and it'll carry out from me, and that I'm free to be myself. And I think there are things we don't talk about, but in a community like the CreateAWorld, which I actually sent to my 16-year-old granddaughter on her 16th birthday, who's asked me to help her train in her skills and capacities in my area. And oh boy, talk about makes me want to cry. And so that's her first book about how to be community when a community is sensitive to the different ways of each other and just want to keep, as Lori was speaking to, just keeps their bodies and the energy flowing. And then the other part of CreateAWorld is that if you begin to take it in, what felt horrific to you, what felt life-defeating for you, you would do something called holka, and you would go in a hole and you would dream out the nightmare. You would dream it in the safety of the dark. And when the nightmare was dreamed out, you'd come back out. Those are very precious things.
But so is what you just described of it, correct me if I don't reflect it back right, of like being freed up to just live live your way. Because before, if you had done that, it would have been, I think, the way human beings were, I think it would have been received as, you know, this is supposed to be the right way. Like there would have been a lot of copying, as if it was like a technique or something like that. Now it can be, besides very satisfying for you and enholing for you, it can be a demonstration of, here's an expression of all that we've, for those of us that have been engaging together, here's an expression of what that can be like. It's, for me anyway, it's more like being freed into finding my own. And then we each have what's our unique interface with the world. And there's something very powerful right now that's calling for that, is what it seems like to me. Something calling for people to find that interface, almost like it's a next evolutionary step. That's going to be really interesting to see, watch that unfolding.
And I knew early on if I didn't have my privacy and I didn't have those that could let me let my hair down, you know, be my humanity, which I think is the cost to many leaders, you know, that they don't have a secure privacy with a secure popolo or people that where they can let their hair down because of this need to interface with the public at some level of authority or some level of perfection. And it makes me emotional because I actually think it's changing. I actually think that I'm watching a TikTok and I can't remember the other one, but I've been watching them because it truly is more about being with each other than a leader follower. And so leadership simply becomes self-expression and others enjoying being with others self-expressing. And I think we'll see that in the next few years. I mean, like short few years, which is a very exciting step.
I don't know if this is a sidestep or not, but I started thinking about this one particular book when Deb was talking. It's called Donut Economics, but it's really a look at what I think is whole system thinking around the idea of economics. And it weaves in with what you were saying, Tantra, and that people are stuck in positions right now, well, particularly people in power. And we have to find a way that people can offer their ideas without a positional response. And in donut economics, they really look at all economic decisions being made for the whole, what is good for everything. It's like, so what pops in my head, keeps popping in my head is all the homeless we have. And I'm saying, how much more obvious can you get that the societal arrangement that we have isn't working? You know, you wouldn't have 5,000 homeless in your city if everything was copacetic. So sometimes things arise until people have no choice but to make a decision that serves all. And I think the first decision sometimes in this positional society is to get rid of the part that doesn't agree with our previous positions about how life should be. And then we have to say, okay, alternative, there has to be alternative ways to look at this, other ways to create a world that fits everyone, that allows everyone to, as you know, they be their unique and essential self, which is what we've been talking about. That's what you're enjoying right now, is that opportunity just to be you. And you know, I'm just trying to, you know, it's almost like, you know, you giving, you know, what Lori said, if we could get everybody dancing and moving, maybe we could get everybody out of positions. It's that shift to whole system thinking that what I get gripped by is not necessarily the answer for all. And it's the Kinevada in the creative society that works for everybody, and that people don't feel like they have to hold on to their old position. And these are old positions. None of them are grounded in a today reality. Let's be present in the moment reality. They're I get this picture in my head of everybody pulling, you know, like, no, I can't let go. I can't let go. I can't let go. And something's going to make their hands pop. And the position no longer can be held. And then if there's enough of us who are holding the space for let's find something that works for everyone, where we are each able to be respected and supported as our unique and essential selves, then that kind of thing, whether it's donut economics or it's a balanced and whole world, can be possible. And that just makes me think of my guest last week, you know, teaching children at a very young age to look at all aspects of situations and not make anyone wrong, but to discover what it is that where you are coming from and where you want to go, and where do we want to go as a group. It's wonderful watching the interweaving that's going on right now. I'm kind of fascinated how aberrated things have to get before suddenly it pops. and people are willing to look at more sides of the position. You know, they give up their positioning, I think. I'm complete.
All right, I want to be devil's advocate here. So we've come to a point where we have at least that much perception and awareness, what you just said. So I've started thinking about two things. What about, no, three. How would I be with somebody that has differences really diametrically opposed to mine? And so far, I don't get very far. It's not very enlightened. Like, for example, my husband and I are very, very different on certain political issues. Like, I'm shocked. How did I end up here? Shocked. And the only solution we've got is just not talk about it. That's it. That's not very, world changing. I have no idea what my positions are. I'm quite blind to them, that are like, what do I have to be forced to let go of? No idea. And if I was looking from their point of view, somebody who's diametrically opposed to me on something, in their view, I'm the one that has to be popped free. I don't know how to be with that in any kind of operational way, because I ain't letting go of nothing. And then I've already forgotten the third one. But it would be sort of, no, actually, no. What is that? Because that's kind of, in a certain way, kind of violent. If only psychically, in our psychic consciousness space, that somebody has to be ripped away from what they know before they can or will change. What is that? I don't know that that's the only model. So those are kind of, go ahead, because that's stuff.
Well, I was going to say, I didn't, when I said it, I guess the pop was energetic to me, that all of a sudden that they were no longer in a position, that it wasn't a violent one. I keep getting this picture of what if they were all supposed to dance to music and everybody just kept doing freeform dancing. Because I did that once with Tom Kenyon, and he played music, and he said, just let the music flow through you. So people were doing their own thing, but also coming in contact with others. And it's almost what Lori was saying, is that when you are allowing the body to speak through sound and through music, I think there's a lot of barriers that are eliminated, that they melt, and you start seeing them as another like you versus the other. And I don't think we're going to get Congress to dance together, but which gives me its whole picture all by itself, But what if in our minds we free-form danced with those that we feel in opposition to, just in our minds? Because once we start moving like that, then we start shifting our position. Not a position that I have to fall over and do what they want, but all of a sudden I see them as a whole person, or I see more aspects of them. It's sort of like writing template 3 about a person. I did that once. I had a gal here who was irritating me a lot. And I knew that she was very much, like, we'd walk down the hall to each other and she'd turn away and turn her head and stuff. So yeah, I knew she didn't like me. So, but what I did was, when I wrote that, I suddenly saw all aspects of her. The grandmother, the mother, the dog lover, and all these different parts. So it got me out of the position of reacting to her position, if that makes sense. And there's got to be different ways, and I think this CreateAWorld conversation is one of them, but there has to be ways that we individually can move from the stomach clenched reaction to somebody, or the to creating a being with them without being in our position. It doesn't mean they changed. It doesn't mean any of their ideas changed, but who we are and who we come to the conversation is different. And when we come to the conversation differently, and I think sometimes it doesn't mean that we change what we hold to be true. It's that we don't get in opposite. We're not an energetic opposition to them. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense. It gives me two ways to, I love the image of just locking all the doors to Congress and blaring the music, different kinds of music. I just love that image. That'd be awesome. And then they can't, like a mega filibuster, and they can't come out until, I don't know what the register would be.
We'll send Lori in.
Yes.
So
that-
I love this conversation because I'm reading a book. I don't even remember the title, but it's something about learning about the both and lived my own lived experience and old paradigm. It's the either or. And while in some instances, the either or fits, is the light green, you go, or if it's red, you stop. So there is an element of safety and way of being in coherence with the rest of the world, if you will. And there's more. So how do we not necessarily rip something away from us, but include it all? So there is a little bit of the either or and a lot more of the both and really oscillating within circumstances, within your own lived history, your own lived experience, in connection not only with yourself but with others. How do you cultivate and generate that fullness, that broader, deeper, wider way of being? It doesn't, that includes all realities, that includes all diversity, that includes all perspectives. And while it may not resonate for any one of us or them, there's still a sacredness and an honoring of meeting them where they are. Right. And that, the both and is like, oh my God, to me, that's a freeing. I lived my entire life, well, up until 10, 15 years ago, in that either or. It's either black, white, yes, no. And that led to health issues. And through my journey with my health issues, I'm like, okay, there's really not yes or no. How can I learn to be in the gray or in the both and? And I got to choose how to engage, how to interact, how to be with. And we all have, there again, we all have the ability to be in that. And conversations through CreateAWorld, I totally love, like, put anybody in a room and dance, because I've done it at retreats. I've created something called chi dancing, and that's what we do. Some people are like, oh my God, there's no structure. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll learn how to add a little bit of structure so it, keeps people engaged. But it's that, okay, go do your thing and then come and dance with another. go do your thing, come dance with another. So it's that interactive play and allowing it to be what it is. I'm complete.
That's really cool listening to you. I'm already thinking about how to fold that into working with clients, because one of the things that's actually part of my training is to really constantly be on the lookout for what are my biases, what's my response to differences, how to manage that, and really be accepting of pretty dramatic differences. And I'm talking about things that in my private life, there'd be zero room for. Zero. And I don't know if I'm ever going to change on some of those things. But in my professional life, there has to be, and it's always an ongoing process, but sometimes it's kind of tough to learn my biases and be accepting of somebody right where they stand. And listening to you examine what you're examining adds some dimension to how that can be done. I'd like it if you'd find that book, please. What someday, and send it to me. I'd really like that. That'd be great.
The great quiet.
I've been musing about the field of education and how now I'm in this wondering, because I was an educator in the early 80s through 2019. And from the get-go, this is kind of fascinating. We live in this world of top-down structure, but yet at that time and throughout my career, there was this push to not individuate and to seat the children in groups, and even down to teaching writing procedures by having each writing and reading, by having each person in the group have a role to play, and in trying to teach the kids how to relate with each other. And this was throughout my whole career. Yet, then there was the both and of the individuation of test scores and all of that kind of thing. So now I'm in this wondering of, okay, well, many of these children that have come through this way of being educated are now out there in the job markets, and I'm wondering how that might shift. I've seen how that might shift the way that we do business. I do know that there are a lot of collaborative businesses out there. I remember, gosh, this was 2010. I was fascinated by this one business, don't know the name of it, where everybody was free to create their office space in this huge warehouse. There were all these little pods, and they could create whatever environment. So someone loved aviation, and they had all that around them, but they came together in the middle, and that's where they did, they did all their brainstorming and all of that. So that was kind of one example, but also, you look at Google too, and many companies where the emphasis is coming together in communities. So now I'm just kind of wondering about that. Well, I hope that there are a lot of issues in education. This collaborative teaching kids to collaborate with each other on projects and things like that will, once they grow and move into the workforce, will have, some sort of outcome to shift how we relate with each other. So just in that wondering now, that really pinged me.
It goes back. Go ahead, Victoria, you go on.
Go ahead.
And I'm good.
I'm really observing how our conversation is delightfully exploring the idea of moving away, moving towards, and that tensegrity that occurs regardless of which place you find yourself in. You might move away from something, but then the tensegrity brings itself along for the ride of the moving towards. And it makes me curious if we really honestly give a place for moving away from, as well as moving towards. Like, what am I for? What am I against? How do I be with myself when I'm against moving away from something, just as clearly and fully present to the feelings, the body language of that? How do I respond to someone who's moving away from me? How do I honor that using Lori's language? How do I honor someone moving away from me and give a place so that we can find that what I call that moment of contact, where both are actually beginning to move towards in the space they find themselves in order to see what is available in between. And I feel like our conversation has been kind of weaving the back and forth of it, and I'm like in this experience of the tensegrity, and it's just really delicious to like listen in. I feel like I'm listening into this conversation and now moving towards inserting this idea, and like, how does your body, how does your mind respond to this idea of being with each other in this way? I'm complete.
Deb and I were talking about safety the other day. And also in Newfield, they do a beautiful piece of work around this moving away from and moving towards is actually intimacy. It's like preserving our intimacy with life. And we just never, as human beings, intimacy was kind of invented by us. Our desire to be intimate with one another. And sometimes when someone's angry and they move away from us or they move towards us, it's hard to believe it's moving with intimacy, like something intimate about life has been charged, and intimate about their personal relationship with life, and intimate about who they want to be in life. Same with fleeing. They're aspects of intimacy. And it was interesting hearing the word tensegrity, because I love that word, first of all. I think everybody should have the definition on their mirror in the bathroom. And because you can't separate from each other ultimately. You just can't. We are intimacy We are the world of intimacy as human beings. We can't stop that. And but I was thinking as you were talking, I was thinking about how we keep preserving our intimacy with life through what looks like hating each other or looks like being against each other. But truthfully, we're just protecting our intimacy with life. And what you said about, or somebody said about, what if we just made room for that? You know, what if we just made room for that and didn't take it personally, but just knew the other person was protecting their intimacy with life, and that we had in some way challenged that without meaning to. I'm sure nobody here and nobody listening would ever choose to take away someone's intimacy with life. We know where that is done. It's done in the gulag. It's done in concentration camps. It's done in torture camps. But it takes that amount of horror to destroy a human being's intimacy with life. Otherwise, we'd all be, what's the word? Compliant robots. And we just take everything.
And when I hear the word intimacy, I always remember in to me see. That's who we are. Tears.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah.
Would you say the definition of tensegrity or describe it for those who may not know what it is? People watching.
I'll go look it up while somebody talks.
Okay. Because now with these threads of speaking, I always resonated with it. It was like, the tension, the integrity of the tension between whatever. And that was interestingly enough. And now it's become a dance after listening to you all. It's become like there's a choreography of being that guides us from, I guess, the composition we are as humans. That really changed something. So, Victoria, your way of perceiving in terms of movement, and I don't know the right words, I'm sorry, is not something that is available to me easily. I just got a little blip. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Now interactions are dancing. So cool. Thank you.
I'm turning it over to Dr. Heather Hunt because she works in tensegrity every day.
So for me, tensegrity is like a system of connection, a network, where every piece of it is connected through kind of tensile relationships, so that when one piece is pulled, the system responds, or when one piece is pushed, the system responds. And there's, if you Google tensegrity, there's pictures of, and there's baby toys of little like sticks with balls, and they're all in with elastic thread. And if you like pull one, the whole thing kind of contorts that, or you push one and the whole thing contorts. So it's basically being in relationship through webbing, where when you affect one piece, or when one piece is affected, the whole responds. So it's in body work, it's like if you can free up one bit of scar tissue or adhesion, the whole body moves differently because that place is now in relationship and in movement and flow with the rest. Whereas when you have something stuck in the body, it changes, everything responds differently around it.
Any questions about that, Deb? Or Victoria, go ahead.
I was just going to say the way in which I explore through movement is in the listening of the communication. If one part moves, what's the communication through to other parts? And if they're dancing and communicating in the now of the story, you get the whole system response experience of it through your listening.
And I would just like to add to that a depth of, through that tensegrity, you reclaim balance. So you're always moving toward equilibrium. So even though the tension may have pulled in one direction, hopefully with awareness and depth of self-study and all of that, you are coming back to, like, you're creating those practices or those remedies that bring you back to that homeostasis instead of the constant tension or the constant movement. So then you're reshaping into the tension rather than reshaping back into ease of being.
Also, when I met Tantra, and she brought language around what's your access point. And for me, the human body is the access point. Some people on this call, it seems like movement or dance is an access point. Deb, likely for you, the mind is your access point. So how do we help regain the balance of the system through various multiple access points?
You know, my favorite chapter in the book we're getting ready to publish is on empathy. And it's so interesting listening to this conversation. I want to see, I mean, this is a trial of my ability to speak about something. Okay, this is not gathered together well at all. But and also thinking about yarning back in what Electra said, you know, if you listen to tensegrity, we pull it down into a tight definition. It doesn't move out into what is that at a universe level? What is that as a galactic level? You know, what is that as a innate level of existence? And tensegrity at an innate level of existence, a creation-based definition, would be empathy. Because we're all part of this tensegrity of the universe. And it's my favorite 2 chapters in the book, and the hardest bloody 2 chapters to write, I must add. Because then you begin, instead of thinking you have to pull away from somebody because you don't want to pick up on their disappointment, which then throws everything out of balance. You think about moving into your balance point with another human being, because empathy will make you. You can pull us, you know how people say in this whole rigmarole about empathic reaction and how we have to protect and defend ourselves from people, and then we're sobbing in our corner because all we can feel is the pain of the world. And it is where human beings don't realize that we're moving in a magnificent system of balance and checkpoints and homeostasis all the time. So the same way I would feel my own pain and feel my own anguish, if I feel another's pain and anguish, I'm moving with the pain and anguish. I'm not moving with the person. And I'm moving with my response to the pain and anguish, not the person. And that is done by the choice of intimacy. Human beings choose intimacy. They cannot choose empathy. They cannot. It is innate to our system. And, you know, going back to that yarning, that's what yarning is like you talk and talk and talk, and it feels like missing pieces are coming, like a large enough landscape within which you're not looking at the bush, just saying, oh my God, a bush, what do we do with a bush? You know, you're looking at the whole landscape. All in yarning, you start to look at the whole landscape, and there's just different kind of meaning. There's just different kind of meaning when you're seeing everything as part of a greater whole. It's just different. And there's different ways that words work and perception work, because you're looking at how you fit with the all, with the creation itself. And it's just different. The other thing too is something Lori said through self-study. I think that's only for cognitive awareness. I think it's only to become consciously conscious about something. I think human beings can't avoid the natural principles of creation. And the real self-study is, I'm not saying you didn't say this, but the self-study for me is that what is this? And how can I become consciously conscious in a manner that I have a fulfilled life? Because we can't, becoming cognitively aware of ourselves. I mean, everybody knows this. When you go, oh my God, that's what's going on. Oh my God, I just didn't realize that. And the body calms and everything's okay then. And it can even be something terrible. Like, oh my God, that really did scare me. That really did scare me. And so we're up leveling as conscious beings. We're definitely up leveling. And it's fun for me, because for me, it was like linear, like just horizontal, push pull, push pull, push pull, push pull, push pull, push pull. And now it's like push pull, stop. And oh, wow, maybe there's something that's more connected up and down, like we're part of a violin string of creation, and that we're this magnificent being that is in response to another magnificent being. And why would we ever call it things that are horrible when the truth is we're just caring? Even not caring is caring. And so for me, that's the border we're on. And I like this border. So I just want to open it up. We've got 4 minutes. And
I wanted to say something about that chapter on empathy that I really loved is you described, we don't know that we're in the ocean and we're just being pushed by these currents and moved by these currents. And if we knew we were getting moved because we were in the ocean, then when the current of like grief hit us, this is how I read it. We'd just be, oh, I'm being moved by grief. And how do you ride that out versus reacting to it and thinking there's something wrong and getting scared by the power of the grief and wondering where that even came from. And, but I've always, since I read that, I've loved this image of just bobbing in the ocean and getting moved by creation, everything in it.
great. Well, it's been great to be in each other's presence again. I don't think it's very hard to describe what it's like for those of you that listen, what it's like for us to be gathering together, hanging out with no idea what we're going to say, and to commit to come together once a month from all the times we've been in our interviews with others. So blessings.